From Jedi lightsaber combat to open-world smuggler adventures, Star Wars has delivered some of the greatest games in history. Here are the 25 best you need to experience right now. Starting strong at number 1, Star Wars Jedi Survivor is Respawn Entertainment's finest work in the franchise, building on everything Fallen Order established with a larger world, sharper combat, and a story that hits significantly harder. Cal Kestis returns as a more seasoned and conflicted Jedi, navigating a galaxy increasingly hostile to anyone carrying a lightsaber. 5 new combat stances give the gameplay a depth and variety that keeps every encounter feeling fresh, and the planets are dense with secrets, collectibles, and optional challenges that reward thorough exploration. The narrative is emotionally charged and takes bold risks that elevate it well above the typical Star Wars video game story. This is the current gold standard for Star Wars gaming. Landing at number 2, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is widely regarded as the greatest Star Wars game ever made, and one of the finest RPGs in the history of the medium. Set thousands of years before the events of the films, the game lets you build your own character and navigate a galaxy-spanning story filled with morally complex choices, unforgettable companions, and one of the most iconic plot twists in gaming history. BioWare built a world that felt richer and more expansive than anything the films had shown at the time, with dialogue systems and party mechanics that still influence RPG design today. The light and dark side progression system gives every playthrough a distinct flavor, making repeat runs genuinely worthwhile. At number 3, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is the game that convinced the world EA could deliver a great single-player Star Wars experience. You play as Cal Kestis, a Jedi survivor hiding from the Empire who is forced back into action when a mission to rebuild the Jedi Order pulls him out of hiding. The Souls-like combat is deliberate and rewarding, encouraging patience and timing over button mashing. The Metroidvania structure ties the planets together brilliantly, giving you constant reasons to revisit earlier areas as you unlock new Force abilities. Despite some performance issues at launch, the story and world design made it an instant classic and laid the groundwork for the even better sequel that followed it. Number 4 goes to LEGO Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, the most ambitious LEGO game ever made, and one of the most purely enjoyable Star Wars experiences available on modern platforms. The game covers all 9 mainline films, with distinct gameplay styles for each trilogy, a fully overhauled combat system with actual combos and class-based abilities, and a staggering number of unlockable characters and vehicles. The humor is warm and affectionate toward the source material, and the sheer volume of content means you can spend dozens of hours exploring planets, completing side missions, and collecting every last hidden item. Whether you are a longtime fan or introducing someone younger to the franchise, this is the perfect entry point to Star Wars gaming. Coming in at number 5, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2: The Sith Lords is the darkest and most philosophically ambitious Star Wars game ever created. Developed by Obsidian Entertainment, it follows the Jedi exile, navigating a galaxy where the Force itself seems to be dying. The companion Kreia is one of the most brilliantly written characters in any RPG, constantly challenging your assumptions about the Force, the Jedi, and morality itself. The game launched in an unfinished state with a notoriously incomplete ending, but the fan-made restored content mod repairs the cut content and makes this one of the most rewarding RPG experiences in Star Wars history. It is heavier, stranger, and more thought-provoking than its predecessor in every way. At number 6, Star Wars Outlaws is the franchise's first true open-world game and a genuinely exciting change of perspective for the universe. You play as Kay Vess, a small-time criminal navigating the galactic underworld alongside her companion Nyx, taking on jobs from criminal syndicates while trying to pull off one massive score. The stealth and gunplay mechanics improved significantly through post-launch patches, and the exploration of planets like Tatooine and Cantononica captures the lived-in, gritty texture of the Star Wars universe in a way few games have managed. The game deliberately avoids Jedi and lightsabers, choosing instead to tell a story rooted in the criminal side of the galaxy that feels fresh and underexplored. Number 7, Star Wars Battlefront 2 from 2017 had one of the most notorious launches in gaming history due to its controversial monetization. But years of free updates transformed it into one of the most content-rich and faithful Star Wars multiplayer experiences ever made. The single-player campaign following Imperial soldier Iden Versio is a genuinely strong story that bridges the original trilogy and the sequels in ways that became accepted canon. Multiplayer spans all three film eras, featuring iconic heroes and villains, large-scale ground battles, and starfighter modes that are among the most thrilling in the franchise. Its active player base and free-to-play entry point make it accessible and worth revisiting in 2026. Coming in at number 8, Star Wars: The Old Republic is a massively multiplayer online RPG that has been running since 2011 and remains one of the most content-rich Star Wars experiences available. The game features 8 fully voiced class stories, each offering a distinct narrative set in the era of the ancient Jedi and Sith conflict. Whether you play as a Sith Inquisitor, a Jedi Consular, or a roguish smuggler, each story feels genuinely different in tone, moral complexity, and gameplay emphasis. Decades of expansions have added dozens of hours of additional story content, and the free-to-play model means you can experience a massive amount of the game without spending anything. It is a living Star Wars RPG that continues to grow. At number 9, Star Wars Republic Commando is one of the most underappreciated games in the entire franchise, and a tactical shooter that still stands up impressively well. You lead Delta Squad, an elite clone trooper unit, through missions set during the Clone Wars era, with a focus on squad coordination, cover mechanics, and satisfying gunplay that feels distinct from every other Star Wars game. The brotherhood between the 4 squad members is conveyed brilliantly through sharp writing and voice acting that makes you genuinely care about their survival. The dark military tone sets it apart from the more heroic narratives of other Star Wars games and gives it a unique place in the franchise's gaming history. It remains a cult classic that deserves far more attention. Number 10 on our list, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast is a landmark entry in the Jedi Knight series and still one of the best lightsaber combat experiences in any Star Wars game. You play as Kyle Katarn, a former Jedi who reconnects with the Force after a deadly encounter forces him back into action. The first half of the game plays as a tense first-person shooter, but once Kyle reclaims his lightsaber, the game transforms into something far more special, with physics-based saber combat and force powers that felt unprecedented at the time. The multiplayer mode was a major part of its legacy, offering lightsaber duels that rewarded genuine skill and technique in ways that remained unmatched for years after release. At number 11, Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy is the direct sequel to Jedi Outcast, and the most combat-focused and customizable entry in the Jedi Knight series. You create your own Jedi student at Luke Skywalker's Academy, and choose your lightsaber configuration from the start, including single blades, dual sabers, or a double-bladed staff. The mission structure gives you more freedom than previous entries, letting you choose the order of assignments and explore different planets across the campaign. The force powers and lightsaber mechanics feel fluid and expressive, and the game's multiplayer community kept the experience alive for years after launch. For fans of pure Jedi combat and customization, this remains a deeply satisfying experience. Number 12 goes to Star Wars Squadrons, one of the most focused and mechanically polished space combat games in the franchise's modern era. The game puts you in the cockpit of both Rebel and Imperial starfighters, across a campaign that tells a story from both sides of the conflict, following the events of Return of the Jedi. Full VR support makes it one of the most immersive Star Wars experiences ever created, placing you physically inside an X-Wing or TIE fighter, with all the tactile detail that entails. The multiplayer modes, particularly fleet battles, offer a deep and satisfying competitive experience built around resource management and coordinated team play that rewards communication and strategy over individual skill. At number 13, Star Wars Battlefront from 2004 is the game that defined large-scale Star Wars multiplayer combat for an entire generation of players. Developed by Pandemic Studios, it threw you into ground battles across iconic planets from both the original and prequel trilogies, letting you fight as infantry, pilots, or special units, including Jedi and Sith heroes. The scale of the battles, the accuracy of the environments, and the sheer joy of fighting as a clone trooper on Geonosis or a rebel soldier on Hoth made it an instant classic. Its modding scene on PC remains active to this day, with a dedicated community continuing to add new content to a game that is over 2 decades old. Number 14, LEGO Star Wars: The Complete Saga is the collection that introduced millions of players to both the LEGO game formula and the Star Wars universe simultaneously. Covering the prequel and original trilogies across 6 films, the game delivers the charming slapstick humor and accessible co-op gameplay that made the LEGO series a household name. Every level is packed with secrets, collectibles, and hidden characters that reward patient and thorough players willing to replay missions with new abilities. The local 2-player co-op remains one of the best ways to experience it, making it a perennial recommendation for shared gaming sessions. It is warmly nostalgic and genuinely fun, even decades after its original release. Coming in at number 15, Star Wars: The Force Unleashed is the game that fully explored what it would feel like to wield the Force with reckless and overwhelming power. You play as Starkiller, Darth Vader's secret apprentice, whose Force abilities let you throw stormtroopers across rooms, pull Star Destroyers from orbit, and chain together spectacular combo attacks on massive groups of enemies. The story fits neatly between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, expanding on the origins of the Rebel Alliance in a narrative that was briefly considered canon. The physics engine powering the Force interactions was genuinely groundbreaking at the time, and made every encounter feel like a power fantasy in the best possible sense. At number 16, Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 2 continues the story of Starkiller in a shorter but visually more impressive sequel that doubles down on the spectacle of Force-powered combat. Dual lightsabers are now the default, and the combat animations and environmental destruction feel even more cinematic than the original. The story's more personal and emotionally focused than its predecessor, exploring themes of identity and memory through Starkiller's uncertain origins. While the campaign is shorter and the game received mixed reviews at launch for its reduced scope, the core combat remains deeply satisfied, and the set pieces are among the most visually dramatic in any Star Wars game. It is best experienced as a direct continuation of the first game. Number 17, Star Wars Battlefront 2015 is a technically stunning recreation of the original trilogy's most iconic battlegrounds, rebuilt from the ground up by DICE using the Frostbite engine. The visual and audio fidelity is extraordinary, capturing the look and sound of the original films with a level of accuracy that was unprecedented for a Star Wars game at the time. Walker Assault on Hoth and Fighter Squadron modes delivered large-scale multiplayer experiences that felt genuinely cinematic. While the game launched with less content than many players expected and drew criticism for its lack of a proper campaign, the core multiplayer experience was polished and exciting. It remains visually one of the most faithful recreations of the original trilogy's world. At number 18, Star Wars Episode III: Revenge of the Sith is a fast-paced action game that serves as a tie-in to the film and one of the better movie game releases of its era. You can play through the film's story as either Obi-Wan Kenobi or Anakin Skywalker, and the 2-player versus mode lets you stage lightsaber duels between iconic characters from across the franchise. The combat is arcade-style and satisfying, with a variety of force powers and combo attacks that give both characters distinct and expressive movesets. For its time, it captured the kinetic energy of the prequel-era battles more effectively than most licensed games of the period, making it a nostalgic favorite for players who grew up with the prequel trilogy. Coming in at number 19, Star Wars Dark Forces is the foundational first-person shooter of the entire franchise, and the game that introduced Kyle Katarn to a Star Wars universe. Released in 1995, it placed players in a shooter built with the same engine as Doom, but set entirely within the Star Wars universe, with mission designs that favored exploration and objective-based gameplay over simple corridor shooting. The story serves as a direct prequel to A New Hope, tasking Kyle with discovering the Empire's Dark Trooper program. For its era, it was a revelatory Star Wars experience, and its influence on the Jedi Knight series that followed it cannot be overstated. It laid the groundwork for an entire lineage of great Star Wars games. At number 20, Star Wars Jedi Power Battles is an underrated action brawler set during the events of The Phantom Menace, letting you play as iconic Jedi from the prequel era, including Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Mace Windu. The two-player co-op mode was a highlight for many players who grew up with the game, making it one of the more accessible and social Star Wars games of its generation. The recent remaster brought the game to modern platforms, with quality-of-life improvements that smooth out some of the rougher edges of the original release. It captures the visual style and energy of Episode 1 faithfully, and serves as a fun slice of prequel-era gaming that deserves more recognition than it typically receives in discussions of the franchise. Number 21, Star Wars X-Wing Alliance is the pinnacle of the classic X-Wing space combat simulation series and one of the most mechanically deep Star Wars games ever designed. You take the role of a member of the Azamines, a smuggling family caught up in the Galactic Civil War, piloting a variety of rebel ships across a campaign that builds to the Battle of Endor from Return of the Jedi. The flight model is genuinely complex, requiring active management of shield and engine power allocation during dogfights, giving skilled players meaningful advantages over less experienced opponents. The starfighter combat feels weighty and tactical in a way that few Star Wars space games before or since have matched, with the same level of fidelity. At number 23, Star Wars Bounty Hunter is a third-person action game that puts you in the role of Jango Fett during the events leading up to Attack of the Clones, giving the iconic bounty hunter his most substantial video game spotlight. The gameplay revolves around tracking and capturing or eliminating targets across a variety of planets, using Jango's gadgets, jetpack, and dual blasters to navigate combat encounters with flexibility. The game captures the mercenary tone and visual aesthetic of the prequel era effectively, and the story adds genuine depth to Jango Fett's motivations that the film left largely unexplored. For fans of the prequel trilogy and of bounty hunter culture within the Star Wars universe, this is an essential experience. Number 24, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader is widely considered one of the best GameCube launch titles ever made, and one of the finest Star Wars flight games in the franchise's history. You take command of Rogue Squadron through a series of missions that recreate the most iconic starfighter battles of the original trilogy, from the Death Star trench run to the Battle of Hoth and the assault on Endor. The visuals were remarkable for their time, and the mission design rewarded precision flying and memorization with medal rankings and unlockable content, including secret missions where you fly as Darth Vader. It remains a beloved entry in the franchise that captures the thrill of Star Wars aerial combat better than almost anything else. Closing out at number 25, Star Wars Masters of Terrascasi is a fighting game featuring Star Wars characters that holds a unique and somewhat notorious place in the franchise's gaming history. Released during the height of fighting game popularity in the late 90s, it brought together iconic heroes and villains, including Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, and Boba Fett in one-on-one combat using both weapons and the Force. The game is widely considered flawed and unbalanced by modern standards, but it represents a fascinating moment in Star Wars gaming where the franchise attempted something genuinely unconventional. For fans of Star Wars history and gaming curiosities, it is a memorable entry that captures a very specific era of both the franchise and the fighting game genre.